If you spend 8, 9, maybe even 10 hours a day behind a desk, it's quite easy to convince yourself that your job is the reason why you can't lose body fat. Barely moving through the day, you might be eating lunch at your desk, and by the end of the workday, you are absolutely shattered. So asking you to do an extra 4 or 5 hours of exercise per week on top of that is probably going to feel like a big ask. Fortunately, that's not actually what you need to do. Your desk job doesn't make fat loss impossible, but it does create a few issues that we need to overcome with different strategies. So rather than telling you to get up at 5 a.m., do a ton of cardio in the evening, and meal prep absolutely every meal that you have, I want to show you how we would actually approach fat loss for someone who is desk bound for the majority of the day. And the way we would do that is by pulling on 3 of the big levers: training, everyday movement, and nutrition. And then within each of those levers, there are a couple of smaller things that we want to start in. So starting with training, and the first big mistake that a lot of busy professionals make is that they feel that they have to do a brutal workout because they've been sat down all day. But sitting down all day does not mean you have to spend the evening doing cardio. It does not mean that you have to push the intensity so high that you can't walk for days afterwards. A workout is not repayment for being inactive through the day. That way of thinking quickly leads to this idea that exercise is a punishment, creating a negative relationship with the activity in general, making it really easy to skip out once we lose things like motivation or willpower. Instead, we need to look at the bigger picture. If you're awake for roughly 14 to 16 hours a day, a 45-minute workout is barely going to make a dent compared to what the other hours of your day include. It makes no sense to put your entire fat loss strategy into that 45 minutes when we've got so much more time to utilize. For the majority of clients that come here to Thrive Fit, we use those workouts to emphasize getting stronger, emphasize building or retaining muscle, and focus on getting fitter, all in ways that are progressively going to be overloaded so that they are using the gym to train their body, and we are using outside of the gym to hit any specific fat loss goals. And with this in mind, 2 to 3 good strength sessions a week can be more than enough. I've done another video specifically looking at what I would do if I only had 2 hours per week to do a strength session, and I'll put the link to that in the description. But the short version of that is you do not need to train every day. Typically, we would prescribe 2 or 3 strength sessions per week. 2, absolutely viable if that's all you can fit in. We can absolutely make good progress on 2 sessions a week if they're structured correctly. 3 is also a great option if you have the availability in your schedule and your recovery is not going to be impacted by that. However, when we're going to 4, 5, or 6 sessions, for most busy professionals, that is just not realistic with their schedule. And in all honesty, progress comes from quality rather than quantity. You can absolutely do 5 or 6 strength sessions half-hearted with no real focus or overload and get worse results than if we were to do 2 fantastic sessions that have been set up specifically for specific goals. That means tracking what you're doing. It means progressively overloading through weight, sets, reps, tempo, stretched positions, and for making sure that we are working sufficiently hard so that we are close to maximal effort without hitting failure. There is a very big difference between exercising 5 to 6 times a week versus training with a properly devised structure twice a week. And that brings us to number 3, where your biggest opportunity is likely outside of the gym. And this is probably the bit that gets overlooked most with desk workers. Let's say you're someone who can fit 3 lots of 45 minutes training into your diary. That is 2 hours and 15 minutes a week. There are over 165 more hours in the week for you to be making progress. So rather than adding in another workout and making it up to only 3 hours, try and take a look at what happens during the rest of the day. And this is where we look at non-exercise related activity. Things like parking further away from work so that you have to walk in and out. Things like taking the stairs instead of the lift. If you are someone who is on a lot of phone calls for meetings, taking those as you're walking rather than sat at the desk. Now, this isn't about hitting some magical 10K step goal. Again, for people who are at the desk a lot through the day, 10K is somewhat of an unrealistic target. If someone's starting here at Thrive Fit, I'm much more interested in finding out how I can increase their baseline steps by about 1 to 2,000, because that jump up, possibly up to 3,000, can make a really meaningful difference compared to what they are currently doing. And what's even better is it doesn't take a massive amount of extra effort. Most people will walk at a pace of 1,000 steps every 10 minutes. If we're looking at increasing our baseline by 2,000, that's 20 minutes a day. And it doesn't have to be a block of 20 minutes. It can be 4 lots of 5 minutes. It can be a 10-minute walk before work and a 10-minute walk after work. Before adding in another workout, simply ask yourself if you could be a little less sedentary through the day. And this is actually why nearly everyone who joins Thrive Fit starts out with our foundations program. We don't just look at someone and give them the same prescription of 3 workouts and 10K steps every single day. We look at what you're doing, what you want to achieve and what your working week looks like so we can see what realistically fits. Someone who's commuting into Leeds 5 days a week will need a very different prescription compared to someone who's in the office a couple of days a week and then working from home the rest of it. The goal isn't to give you some cookie cutter difficult plan. The goal is to prescribe the plan that is right for you. Now, looking at another lever, we are onto nutrition. And this isn't a case of we have to focus on calories, but it's also not a case of calories don't matter. But what matters a little bit more is our food environment. Ultimately, to lose body fat, we need to be in a calorie deficit. But it isn't knowing that fact that's the difficult bit. The difficult bit is how a typical working day influences how you are eating. It might be that your train is running late or that you've hit traffic, so you're just having to grab a quick coffee on the go rather than actually have a proper breakfast. It might be that meetings have overrun, so you've only got 15 minutes to jump into Tesco and grab something. Or you're with clients and you're having a meal out with a few drinks on top. It might be that you're hitting the early afternoon slump and feeling like you need some caffeine or some sugar to see you through. None of those decisions individually ruin your progress, but repeat that Monday to Friday, week on week for months on end, and suddenly your desk job has influenced your nutrition far more than simply you just sitting down. So rather than just knowing that your environment is a factor, what can you do about it? I'd recommend that you implement 3 nutritional anchors that you can implement with any meal that you're grabbing. Anchor 1 is trying to get protein with every meal. It helps you feel fuller for longer. It's going to help with recovery of muscles from those training sessions you've been working hard in. And having that protein as a centerpiece makes meals a lot easier to structure. Anchor number 2 is to decide lunch before you're hungry. One of the worst times to have to decide what you are having for your lunch is at 1:30 p.m. when you've got a 15-minute time frame and you're stood in Tesco's. Now, obviously, you could meal prep and bring it with you. But if timing for meal prep is a factor in whether you do that or not, the answer is to have 2 or 3 go-to options that you know you can have. You know where they are in the store, you know how much they're going to cost you, and you know how to build a meal out of it. 2 or 3 gives you enough variety to feel like you're having something different, but the energy to make decisions over 2 or 3 options is very minimal compared to the whole store. And anchor number 3 is to put some color alongside your protein. This is all about getting volume in the meals without it being calorie dense. If you can aim for and add in 3 different colors alongside your protein option, you will get an array of vitamins and minerals alongside good fiber and a feeling of fullness and satisfaction without needing to do too much thinking. Some fruit or vegetables that we can cover, yellows, oranges, greens, reds, purples, whatever it may be, will help fill the plate, make it look more attractive, and alongside the protein will help keep you full. Now, once you get these anchors in place and your weekday is starting to become sorted, try not to fall into the weekend trap. You can be absolutely spot on from Monday to Friday and still make fat loss difficult if we're having Friday drinks. And then that goes into a Saturday meal, and that goes into a Sunday of chilling out and just having snacks and doing very little movement. Now, the point isn't to make you feel guilty about the weekend. And it isn't that you should never go out again. That's exactly the kind of plan that our clients and basically anyone wouldn't stick to. But instead, try to prioritize and choose what matters. If that Saturday meal, out with friends, out with family, socializing is the priority, then can we just rein in the Friday drink? Or could we make sure that before we sit and chill on the sofa on a Sunday, that we go out for a walk and increase our steps? Maybe try and pick some snacks that have higher nutritional value. The aim is to try and find some form of moderation, because if we don't, we very quickly fall into this idea of I've been fantastic through the week and I can do what I want, but that is a thing that is slowing down progress. And the final point I want to make is probably the biggest one that I want you to take away from this video. Stop building your fitness around the assumption that eventually everything is going to calm down. There is always another proposal deadline. There is always a quarter end. There is always a birthday. There is always Christmas. There are always holidays. So instead of thinking when work gets quiet, I'll get fit, build a fitness routine that is capable of surviving those busy times. And the quickest way that you can do that is getting started when you're at your busiest. If you can find a way to make it work in those moments, then it is so much easier when you do finally get a moment of quiet compared to if we were doing it the other way around. So maybe that is 2 strength sessions instead of 4. Maybe that's a 20-minute walk at lunch, or splitting it down for 10 minutes before and after work. Maybe it's deciding your 3 lunch options in advance and only picking one of those 3. Maybe it's going out for dinner on a Saturday night without writing off the Friday and the Sunday before. None of those are particularly exciting, but that is exactly why they work. So if you've got a desk job and you're trying to lose body fat, don't try to punish yourself with exercise. Strength train 2 or 3 times a week, increase your movement outside of the gym, build a few nutritional anchors, and account for your social life. But most importantly, build the routine around how your life and schedule currently looks. And if you're a busy professional in Leeds and you'd rather not have to implement all of these by yourself, that's exactly what we do at Thrive Fit. Everyone starts with foundations, where we assess exactly where you are, what you are going to need the most, and what things maybe aren't relevant for you, so that we can build a plan around your lifestyle with actual real life examples of what do and don't work. To get started with that, all you need to do is book a free intro visit. And there's a link in the description below for you to do so. Otherwise, if you've got a desk job, let me know in the comments below, what's the biggest thing you're struggling with right now? Training, movement, food, sleep, or is it something else? I'll see you in the next one.